Before I start this video, I just want to give out a disclaimer that I will be talking about mental illness such as suicide and depression in this review video. And if you are someone who is in need to talk to someone about their own mental health, I'll leave a link below to a website I found that has worldwide hotlines. Now let's get started with this video. So I read this. House of Dreams is a modernistic and chronological retelling of Ella Montgomery's life. From the time she was born in 1874 in Clifton, now known as New London, to when she passed away in Toronto in 1942. I'm going to be referring to her from now on as Maud without an E, because that's what she preferred to be called. To my understanding, pre-2008 biographies do not mention Maud's struggles with mental health, because it had just came out that year that there was and still is a belief in Maud's family that she had overdosed on drugs as a form of suicide and that she suffered through depression in her life. This inspirational rendition is an updated version gleaned through the lens of mental illness, seasonal depression, bipolar disorder, which was formerly called manic depression, and anxiety. It does not refrain from acknowledging that mental illness was a crucial part in Maud's life. When I went to the bookstore in May, I was originally thinking of purchasing The Golden Road, but then I spotted this biography. The illustrated book cover caught my attention, although mainly geared towards a younger audience due to its easy to follow writing style. I find this to be the perfect introduction into Maud's life for newcomers such as myself. The chapter illustrations, which were created by Julie Morstad, are so nice and fit with the theme of this biography being targeted towards young readers. So the other thing I was mentioning was the chapter illustrations. This one here is when she's a teacher. This one she goes to Halifax. Oh, this is when she was with Herman. That's going to be mentioned later on. Creating Anne. There you go. So this is the chapter that deals with creating Anne, and this is her writing Anne. That's her cat. And yeah, cats were also a very significant part to Maud because she always had a cat at some point in her life, and that's all I wanted to say. Okay, continue with the video. Since I have a hardcover book, if I take off the cover, you can see an image of a green china dog. Hi. So I'm gonna open this up. This is the china dog that I was referring to. I hope you guys can see that. Yeah. I really love this specific detail because it is explained from the beginning of this biography that china dogs were a very important object for Maud as they reminded her of her father and her father's family. The senator kept on his mantle 2 large china dogs with green spots. According to Maud's father, each midnight they would leap down from the shelf to the hearthrug. The story and the spotted china dogs enchanted little Maud. As patiently as she watched, she never caught them coming alive, but she never forgot them either. Years later, on her honeymoon, when she spied 2 large spotted china dogs for sale, she snapped them up and shipped them home to guard her bookcase. They were vivid, proud reminders of her father's side of the family. The book deals more with her romantic interactions, marriage, depression, as opposed to the literary aspect of her life, although her literary achievements are still mentioned, emphasizing the fact that her works were groundbreaking for both Canadian authors and women. It's approachable, relatable, and humanistic. I believe that Rosenberg did a spectacular job at making Maud into a 3-dimensional character. Her descriptions seem very personal, therefore very well researched. Many sources were provided that paved the way for this biography. Reading this felt like a conversation with someone who was retelling personal and intimate stories about their friend. A pattern of this one specific thought experimentation appears throughout this recount. The question of what if. What if Maud had stayed with Nate Lockhart, not married Edwin, written Anne of Green Gables at a different point in her life? This illustrates regret in Maud's life. The idea of a struggling female author is often glorified. However, this book explains the continuous desire that Maud had for her life not to have turned out the way it did, even with the prolific success of her novels. Other topics that are explored are sexism, abuse, and premarital sex. It was rare for a woman to make a career out of writing during Maud's time. Her husband, Edwin, did not care for her novels. He also suffered from mental problems, and it is said that he even became physically abusive towards Maud during their marriage. While promised to her cousin Edwin, Maud engaged in kissing and preliminary lovemaking with another man named Herman. She wanted to save herself her marriage as it was instilled in her that women who had sex before marriage would be damned. Notice how I didn't say anything about men having sex before marriage? Sexism. She also struggled with familial relations, most notably her grandfather, who was against Maud receiving further education, and her uncle, who destroyed the McNeil homestead. As soon as grandmother McNeil passed away, and Maud was forced to evacuate. By showcasing Maud's struggles with mental health and the problems she had to face as a female author from the late 19th century to the early 20th century, this biography emphasizes the idea that her novels and heroines, such as Anne, were her ideals, fantasies, rescues, rescues and escapes. I found so many similarities in Anne and Maud, but also things that Anne had yet Maud lacked, as well as things that both suffered with. This biography was published in 2018 and mentions Anne with an E as offering a darker vision of Maud's work. Even through Anne with an E, I think I see more of a resemblance between Maud and Anne than I think I've ever seen before. The way they both dealt with pain and suffering, yet managed to escape from it through their imagination, even if temporarily. To me, authentic and admirable strength comes from remembering that tragedies and grief are only temporary while still enduring them. As humans, we feel we are dependent on other people to give us hope, but who can give us only hope when we all feel and are not always happy? We live in that constant struggle of keeping things internally for fear of what other people might think. I learned from reading this biography that Maud was no different. Writing was therapeutic for Maud. It brought her happiness when nothing else would. "Thank God I can keep the shadows of my life out of my work," she wrote. "I would not wish to darken any other life. I want instead to be a messenger of optimism and sunshine." Maud lived in a world that did not understand mental health in the same way that we do now. Some say that this should be more of a YA biography than a 9 to 12-year-old read, due to the heavy topics included. I think it's wonderful that mental illness is being talked about more towards kids who might not yet fully understand the severity of it. For them to know that their favorite author went through something similar to perhaps something they might be going through might be comforting. Overall, this exchange of life experiences can be positive and can also be discussion starters. It is even mentioned in this biography that Virginia Woolf, Maud's contemporary, was told to stop writing entirely, while Maud was never prescribed in this way. However, once Maud could not write anymore, she began spiraling. An element I found really interesting while reading this biography is the power of authorship when it comes to journal entries versus biography. One could add, fabricate, or omit things about themselves from their journal entries, while biographies have more of an authentic approach to their writing by how they display more of the real life and true events of a person's life. It reveals immensely about the own author's struggles and secrets that they want to conceal from everyone else, possibly finding out. An example of this comes from Maud's affair with Herman. She never actually mentions it in the journal entries for fear of people finding out, but the biographical tool allows it to be brought back into the light, and I thought that was really interesting. The concept of Maud's House of Dreams is really thought-provoking to me. It's supposed to be a focal point in this biography, as well as a reference to Maud's 5th book in the Anne of Green Gables novel series, Anne's House of Dreams. The house of her dreams was something she was able to attain once she moved out for the last time to a neighborhood in the West End of Toronto. It was her property, not a church manse or anything that could be remotely taken from her. Even the McNeil homestead was not hers. Her efforts and passion for storytelling is what led her to this point. Yet the introduction to the final chapter of this book questions why Maud did not decide to move back to PEI after she left Norval. She felt complete in PEI, unlike any other place she'd ever lived in. Perhaps things could have been different had she moved back, but the idea of nostalgia is something unattainable. Her life had completely changed. She didn't have her grandparents or her father to go back to. You can never truly relive something the same way you lived it the first time. Maybe this is what led Maud to start a new life in Toronto. However, the last few sentences clarifies that PEI is Maud's home. When she passed, she had returned at last, just in the same way that we all have a special connection to our first home. In spite of the few homes that she built in Ontario, her identity remained with her origins, PEI. In conclusion, I think this is a very thorough and empathetic recount, a holistic approach to our beloved author. It complements other biographies of Maud. The section with Nate Lockhart kept me on my toes because he was the inspiration for Gilbert Blythe. I was intrigued by the possibility that Chester, Maud's eldest and troubled son, could have kept her last written notes for the sake that she was writing about all of the secrets that she found out about him. Until this day, we don't know what she had discovered about her own son. The ending was so heartbreaking, yet so poetic in the way that Rosenberg described Maud's funeral. There was no fairy tale ending, but in spite of the pain and grief that she had experienced, Maud's life had some fairy tale moments at times. "Perfect happiness I have never had, never will have," she confided to her journal. "Yet there have been, after all, many wonderful and exquisite hours in my life." And that's the end of my review for House of Dreams, The Life of Lucy Maud Montgomery by Liz Rosenberg. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of it. If you guys have ever read this book, let me know in the comments below. And if you guys would like to purchase this book, I'll leave an affiliate link that I have in the description box below. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for always watching. Mwah. Knock on wood for Selma. Follow me on all my social media accounts. They should be appearing on the screen right now. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you want. Turn on the post notification bell to be notified whenever I post. And I think this is the 8th video out of the 10 that I'm going to be doing for this series that I have for the Anne with an E season 3 premiere countdown. And yeah, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Mwah.